All right, so you ready for this? Today's deep dive is going to get you thinking. We're going to explore false identity, a fictional story, but man, it makes you wonder, what if your entire life was based on a stolen identity? And get this, it was originally written in Hindi, so it adds this whole other layer of cultural intrigue to the story.
Yeah, that premise is so intriguing, right? You're just thinking about someone like the protagonist, Arun,
Yeah.
living this normal life, and then bam, suddenly it all comes crashing down.
Right. Like, Arun has a good job and a stable life, at least that's how it seems, until the police just show up and arrest him for murder. And here's the crazy part, the murder supposedly happened months ago. How could he not know? How could he just be going about his life like nothing happened?
I know, right? It's such a crazy contrast. It makes you wonder what's really going on because Arun swears up and down that he's innocent. But then there's all this evidence against him, like they have his name, his fingerprints, even a witness who says they saw him at the crime scene. So is Arun really innocent? Or is there something else we're missing?
And then things get even more complicated when this mysterious stranger shows up in Arun's jail cell. And he just drops this huge bombshell on him. He's like, "You're living under a stolen identity, and the guy who was murdered, yeah, that was the real owner of your identity."
It's like, whoa. Like there's someone out there, they built this whole life using Arun's identity, like his job, his relationships, everything. Like he was replaced by this phantom. It's scary.
Totally. It's like something out of a movie.
Yeah.
And what makes it even creepier is that Arun, he doesn't remember any of this. Like,
Yeah.
it just makes you question reality for a second, you know? Like, what if this could happen to anyone? What if there's someone out there living my life and I don't even know it?
Right. Like how secure are our identities? We think they're this solid thing, but
Mhm.
what if it's way more fragile than we think? What if this kind of manipulation could happen to anyone?
It really makes you want to go through your whole life, like double check everything to make sure you're really you, right? So, like, while Arun was living his life completely oblivious, this other person was stealing his identity piece by piece. But then, and this is where it gets even crazier, just when Arun is starting to understand what's happening and trying to prove that he's innocent, the stranger just disappears.
I know. It's like, wait a minute. Was this stranger actually trying to help Arun? Or was there something else going on? What if he was the one who stole Arun's identity in the first place, and now he's just trying to cover his tracks?
Yeah, it's like, who can you trust in this situation? Everything you thought was real is falling apart. And, it makes you think, what does it even mean to have an identity when it can be stolen and manipulated like that?
Right. It makes you question everything we use to define ourselves, like our documents, our social
Yeah.
media profiles, even our relationships. We rely on these things, but what happens when they're compromised?
It's kind of scary and fascinating at the same time, right? Like, it makes you peek behind the curtain of everyday life and realize that maybe things aren't as solid as we think they are.
Definitely. And the story doesn't give us any easy answers, which is what makes it so thought-provoking. It makes you consider that maybe our identities aren't as fixed and certain as we believe.
It's funny, we rely so much on things outside of ourselves to like validate who we are. Like, it's our driver's license or, those Instagram posts where everyone's like living my best life or even the way people treat us, and all those things add up to like this picture of who we think we are.
Yeah, totally. It's like we build this shell of identity around ourselves, and then we need that shell to feel safe in the world. But this story with Aaron really turns that whole idea upside down. What happens when that shell is broken? When someone messes with those things or just makes them up, what do you have left then?
Yeah, like the rug is pulled out from under you. And on top of all that, Arun is dealing with being accused of murder, a murder he doesn't even remember doing. That would mess anyone up.
Oh, for sure. It's not just about his freedom. It's like this huge existential crisis. If his whole life was a lie, who is he? Where does he end and this fake version of him begin? Yeah.
Yeah.
That would make anyone question their sanity.
And here's something else we haven't really talked about. If someone could actually steal Arun's identity, does that mean they could mess with his memories too? Like, could they plant fake memories in his head that feel real?
Man, that is a scary thought. And the story kind of leaves that open. Like it's possible. I mean, our memories are what make us who we are, right? They affect everything, the way we see things, our relationships. But if those memories can be changed, then how do we even know who we really are?
Right. There's that saying, the past is a foreign country. Maybe we don't know our own past as well as we think. And if that's true, then who are we?
It makes you question, what is truth? You know, is truth something real, something we can all agree on, or is it just what we believe based on our own experiences, which honestly could be wrong? This story makes you think that line is a lot blurrier than we want to admit.
Okay, so, like, where do we go from here? If we can't even trust our own memories,
Yeah.
how do we live in a world where our identity is so
And
shaky?
maybe the answer is to build, like, a strong inner compass, a sense of self that's not just based on, like, what other people think or even what we remember.
So it's about going deeper than those things, like finding something more real, more essential that says who we are.
Exactly. It's about figuring out our values, our beliefs, the things we're passionate about, the stuff that makes us unique.
Yeah.
It's about finding that inner anchor that can't be messed with no matter what happens outside of us, no matter what we remember or don't remember.
Right, right. It's like building this solid foundation for ourselves. It's not just about stuff we can lose.
Okay, but even if we do that,
Mm.
how do we deal with the fact that we still live in a world where stuff like, our IDs and Facebook profiles are so important? We can't just ignore all that.
Yeah, you're right. It's not about like hiding from the world. It's about finding that balance. We got to be aware that people can manipulate stuff, you know? We got to protect our information, be careful about our privacy. But at the same time, we can't let that fear stop us from connecting with people and living our lives.
So it's like a balancing act, right?
Yeah.
Being cautious, but also being open to connecting. This whole thing with Arun, I mean, even though it's a story, it shows how easy it is for someone to slip into your life and like take over,
Sure.
especially with so much of our lives being online now.
Totally. And the consequences of that, like identity theft, are huge. It can mess you up financially, sure, but it can also really hurt you emotionally.
Yeah.
You feel violated, like you've lost control of your own life. So, besides being super careful online and all that, what are some things people can do to protect themselves?
Well, I think one of the most important things is to like regularly check your credit reports. That way you can catch anything weird, like an account you didn't open or something, before it gets out of hand.
Okay, makes sense. What about those credit monitoring services? Are those a good idea?
Yeah, I think they can be really helpful, especially if you've already been a victim of identity theft or if you're just, worried about it.
Gotcha. Okay, so what about just being more careful online in general? Any tips for that?
Oh, definitely. Think twice before posting personal stuff online, like your birth date or address. And be careful about those phishing scams, those emails or texts that try to trick you into giving away your information.
Yeah, it's like they're getting so good at it now, you know?
Yeah.
It makes you not even want to open your email.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So, I mean, trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. Like, it's always better to be safe than sorry when it comes to your info. Right.
Totally. You know, what's so unsettling about Arun's situation is that we never really find out how his identity was stolen. It just happened, you know? But it makes you think about all the little pieces of ourselves we leave online without even thinking about it.
Right. Like, it's almost as if there's this, like, digital version of ourselves out there just waiting for someone to come along and put it all together.
Okay, now you're just freaking me out. But
Yeah.
okay, back to Arun. Even though the story doesn't tell us how his identity was stolen, it does bring up this other scary thought. What if the person who stole his identity could also get into his memories? Could they, like, change them or erase them or something?
That's a question that really sticks with you after reading this story, right? Like, how much control do we actually have over our own minds,
Mm.
over our memories, over who we are?
Yeah, it's kind of a mind-blowing thought, right? What if someone could just mess with our memories? It would change everything. Like, we wouldn't even know it was real anymore.
And that's what makes false identity so powerful. It forces us to consider that our sense of self, something we usually take for granted, might be more fragile than we think.
So where do we go from here? If we can't even trust our own memories to tell us who we are, how do we deal with that? Especially in a world where, our identity is so uncertain.
Maybe it all comes down to building like a really strong sense of self on the inside,
Yeah.
a core identity that's not just based on what other people tell us or even what we remember.
So, like, looking beyond all those things, what other people think, what we remember, and finding something deeper, something that really defines who we are.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what are your values? What do you believe in? What are your passions? The stuff that makes you, you. It's about finding that inner anchor that can't be shaken by anything outside of yourself, even if your memories are messed with.
I like that. It's like you're building a foundation for yourself that's based on something more solid. I mean, maybe that's the big takeaway from false identity. Our identities might be vulnerable, but we can also build a stronger sense of self that can handle that.
Exactly. It's like remembering that even in a world where information can be twisted and changed, we still have the power to decide who we are. We can shape our own stories and build a sense of self that's really lasting.
Well said. And I think that's a perfect place to wrap up our deep dive into false identity. It's been really eye-opening, right? Exploring how complicated identity and memory can be and what truth really means.
Absolutely. I hope this has given everyone some things to think about, maybe even inspired you to think about who you are and what really matters to you.
Definitely. And, even though the world can feel uncertain and we might question who we are sometimes, I think the search for truth is still one of the most important things we can do. So until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.